just going back to the statement that Kangwanja made about my spin. There's no spin in saying that the Constitution requires the report to speak to national values. That is not spin, it's a fact. The national values are then clearly articulated, and let's be very specific. Let's look at elections. Elections are coming up, as Kangwanja says, as we all know. The IEBC is presently dogged with very low credibility. It's disputed in terms of the composition, in terms of the way it's using the equipment it has, in terms of the elections. There are also issues about its mandate, because there is if you read the Constitution, looking at the law, they are supposed to vet candidates who get nominated to make sure that we then don't have criminals, people engaged in drugs, people with, dubious backgrounds getting into government. Because once they do, you can't fight corruption. You can't fight the kind of crimes that are then perpetrated through the state.
But that was catered for by Chapter 6. And which was watered by Parliament.
Very good point. So that was watered down. So what do we want to see? If the president doesn't want to spin, because this administration is excellent at spin, they are masters of spin, unfortunately at a very high cost to us, we will then want to see what is the concrete plan to deal with the credibility issues around the IEBC. What is the concrete plan to deal with the transition in the judiciary that is coming up, and it's coinciding with the elections? There's also a transition in the IEBC commissioners itself. So what is the concrete plan that will get acceptance across the board? Because we cannot dispute objectives about the credibility of an institution, and then the ruling party calls it spin or criticism or complaints, when other parties other than the state party refute the credibility and objectivity of an institution. So if this State of the Nation does not address that, then not only will the president have failed to address a key issue that could drive conflict, it will just simply reinforce that this is really a window dressing exercise that is really counter to what the Constitution expected.
I'm sure the professor is dying to speak.
No, I have no issues with speaking, because I have a problem with this government also, that it is not doing enough PR. When you complain that this government is doing, I have a problem with it, that it's not doing enough PR.
Yeah.
Its communication capacity is still very weak. Because how can Wanjiru speak like that when the government is aware that it has implemented 70% of the promises it made? That it has dealt with issues of security, that it has so many people that it has put to court, so that the court can decide on their fate regarding corruption.
The question is about corruption, is about conviction.
So because the government does not convict, court convict. Oh no, we are talking about systems. Now listen to this. We are crying on mountain tops about democracy. Democracy is nothing but institutions that implement it. Then you stand on the same mountains and talk about IEBC is not working without saying how it should work, without complaining and whining all around. You just tell IEBC, do X, Y, Z. If it doesn't do it, take it to court. The Constitution is very clear. Any individual member of that commission who carries individual culpability or responsibility for whatever, go to court.
Are you aware of something called Chicken Gate? Something called Chicken Gate.
Chicken Gate came from, it's a name we have used locally, but essentially what we are talking about.
What has been done about those people in the IEBC who eat chicken by this government?
Who confirmed that they have eaten? You see, let's distinguish between witch hunting.
Is that witch hunting?
Take them to court. No, that's what we are saying.
Who is supposed to take them to court?
Systems are, we have investigative mechanisms, don't we? Because governing is not about mob justice. That's not what it's all about. You respect the rule and the order. That's why we say law and order. When you use those two words, law and order, we are emphasizing the rule of procedure in democratic governance. Democratic governance is about the government is not doing anything about corruption. You put pressure on it. Yes, it does something about corruption. Get the people, put it to the prosecution. Then the court does its part. The court can prosecute somebody and jail them. Then the prisons let them out. That has happened in many countries. So let's have procedures. That's
I
what
think
we're talking about.
if you imply that corruption can only be fought through the court system, first of all, you're misleading Kenyans, because the world over that is not the case. If you want to fight corruption, it starts with the point I raised, which you have ignored. What is the position of the ruling party, of the administration, on the quality of officers, the caliber of officers getting into the executive and getting into elected office? What is the position that they are pushing, that the president will whip members of parliament around to ensure that we no longer have people who are culpable, who are compromised, getting into office, either the parastatals, because we have seen appointment to parastatals and we know the mess that is there. In elected office, we have seen the mess, or even in the commissions. So let's not deal with generalities and your very strong, eloquent ability to sidestep issues. My point was very clear. Can you tell us what the position is of the ruling administration in terms of cleaning up to make sure that the elections will be credible?
I need your protection, because I'm not a government. I'm not in the government. So I need that protection.
So you can't answer specific questions.
Can you say that? I'm not here to answer questions on behalf of the government.
You know, government exists in many guises, and we must recognize each one of those guises whenever we see it and as we know it. When we talk about corruption, I think Professor Kwanja is doing a very good job here. He's actually able to sidestep issues and mislead. Look, this corruption has touched and hit right at the heart of government. That when we have had things about
some people think
corruption
in the heart of the president,
they've gone right into the presidency. That there is corruption admitted by head of state himself, that's within State House, within the office of the president. But you know, we cannot just operate on the basis of words. We must go beyond words. That when you are saying as president that this thing is within State House, what are you doing about it? When you say it's within Harambee Avenue, what are you doing about it? When we hear about Langata Road Primary School and it's hitting right at the presidency, what are you doing about it? And we have seen that when some of these people have been mentioned in the past, that none other than the head of state himself has come out and defended them. And we have been told that those who are speaking against these things are detractors who want to bring down the government. In the fullness of time, we see the self-same people now being pushed into the corner, and the self-same mouths that were saying that these people are innocent, that they are being unfairly accused, coming out and saying this woman here is a thief. This is a thief who should be in committee maximum security prison. That the person who is saying that is a person who has told members of parliament that each time you see my mouth speaking, you should know that it's the government that is speaking. And here I'm talking about none other than the leader of the majority in the National Assembly. That there's a lot of lip service, and I do not place any premium to these words that vaporize the moment they leave the lips.
Thank you very much. You know, the whole issue of corruption, it needs political goodwill. The political goodwill will only come from one source. That's the presidency. And the point here is, the issue people have been talking about evidence. Corruption is perpetuated by phone calls, by intimidation. It's not done in another way. The CS will call the PS will call the pastoral chief, and it moves from one place to another. So when people come and say, I've not written you, I've not instructed you, but the person makes a phone call, it can come from any source. It can even come from the top, and the person, the CS or the PS, implements what he has been told. What he is told to do is illegal. So the big issue here is that first and foremost, the first thing which you must stop is phone calls. The man who can stop those phone calls not to work is only one, who was bestowed by all Kenyans to be the President of the Republic of Kenya. He's the only man who can wake up and say, from today henceforth, my CS, my PS, my CEO, anybody I find doing this from State House or from Harambee House, you'll face the consequences. And if that's done, there will be change in this country. The president has himself spoken. And even he has said it when he's not in the country, when he's in Israel. He said, look at this weather here. It's very hostile. But come home. I'm faced with a lot of challenges. I'm faced with nepotism. I'm faced with corruption. Surely, who should address the issue of corruption? It is him. Because, you know, we talk about courts, we talk about IBC, we talk about anti-corruption. There must be enabling environment. The enabling environment must come from one source, the chief executive of the country. What do I mean by enabling? You know, in this country, there's a place, if you go to North Eastern, you find the weather is very hostile. For somebody to grow food there must be irrigation. If somebody comes from Kisii, he will wait rain to come, and he will plant. He will be able to do what? To have harvest. So we are not on the same environment. So the issue here is executive creating a hostile environment towards the fight of corruption. My view here is the government is creating a hostile environment towards fighting corruption. There is no political goodwill to fight it.
Let's end the subject of corruption by giving you an opportunity to say something, and then we move from that subject.
Well, corruption is going to be with us in terms of as an issue, because it is a pillar for 2017 campaign for both opposition CORD and Jubilee. Therefore, it's going to be an issue, and you're going to get this tug of war. You know, you have not done anything about corruption. At that time, you are ignoring all the numbers of people who have been brought to book. So that is, Mutegi, you cannot do away with that, even in the next issue. But that said, let's move on to say that Jubilee gave promises. I think the right way to judge is to say, of those promises that they give, there were 225 tangible promises. No, we're not talking about witch hunting. 225. If you go by their manifesto. And out of those, they have admitted they have only implemented 70%. To be more precise, it is 68.8% of what they promised. In other words, we said we are going to build so many level 5 hospitals. Now, by the third year of your rule, how many of those have you implemented? Then we find no, we're not talking about devolved or not devolved. All the money comes from the central government. I mean, Kenya is a unitary state. We are not a federal state. What is your problem? I mean, let's go to political science 101. No. We are a unitary state. We are not a confederacy. We are not.
So anyway, 60% has been achieved.
Yes, they have achieved their promises through whichever means, collaborating with the governors, working with everybody, working with the committees in the villages, whoever can help in the national development agenda. It is not a division of this labor, you want, this is my plate, this is your plate, this is your potato. Yeah, it is government.
But let's
government of one state.
Then we move from that.
I think I had anticipated that we need to do some civic education with the professor, because Kenya is not a unitary state. I'll speak to that. And the State of the Nation address is not supposed to be a report on the Jubilee Manifesto. Go back to the Constitution. It's a report on the implementation of Article 10. So to what extent has implementation of the manifesto aligned itself to Article 10? And that's where the problem starts. Apart from auditing the manifesto itself, because there are statements in the manifesto which even the party has also undermined. On corruption, my last statement would be a phrase that I saw in the papers this weekend from Professor Makau Mutua about the president being a beholden prince. I think fighting corruption is too expensive for President Uhuru Kenyatta, and that's a reality, because he needs to get back into office. And to do so, he then needs to make compromises to raise the money to get the people who can bring the votes, because the electoral system in Kenya is actually fueled by corruption. Part of that is a larger discussion than just the Jubilee Party. But the point is that the Jubilee Party has not done enough to change really the systemic problem we have, because we have a problem around elections. So I believe it's going to be a lot of lip service. But shifting gears to the issue of unitary state, it goes to